Hi everyone, how are you?
Hi, we are good.
Excellent. And wait a few more minutes in the background to get more students. But hi everyone, and welcome to our live session for introduction to coding for researchers. And it's great to see you all here from across our global grad school community and so many different students, not only from Brisbane, but around Australia and some students from Fiji. So thank you for coming. And it's my pleasure to introduce our Dr. Nick Kelly, who is joining us today to give you a little bit of small real-world experience and talk a little bit about coding from his perspective as a researcher. And Nick, if you allow me short introduction. For some reason, I can't see um, myself, but let's try again. So Nick is an associate professor of design science at QUT, and he's working at the intersection of design and education. So it's a very nice mix how to design your learning through smart um, design, and his work is covers a lot of different disciplines, and he focuses on how design can support learning, innovation, and exactly that real world impact, which is fabulous for all of you here or students listening later and watching us online. He's also a chief investigator in both the Digital Media Research Center and the QUT Design Lab. And so I hope he will tell you more about Design Lab. He also had a lot of contribution to cutting edge research in digital environments and creative practice. Last time when Nick joined us, he talked about an amazing app he created, which actually was covering also environment aspect. So thank you so much for joining us today, Nick, and we are really looking forward to hearing more about your insights in a research aspect. Also, if any of you have any questions after Nick will talk to us, please don't be shy, and this is a great opportunity to actually find out more how you can use small language coding to use it to advertise your research and to make it more visible for audience. So thank you, Nick.
Hey Ola, thank you very much for the introduction and hello everybody. Thanks for coming along today. I thought, like, given the breadth of the topic, maybe to direct the discussion, it could be really useful to get a sense of who's in the room. And so I was wondering if everybody could use the chat function, just to get a sense of where everyone is. If I could ask one, what is your field? And number two, how confident are you in coding from a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 equals no confidence and 5 equals very confident? Could I just get a sense from everyone who's able to use the chat of what those two things are? Just because really there's so very much we could talk about, and I can give you a bit of a discussion of some of the things that I've been doing, but it's just going to be so much richer if I know who you all are. Thank you very much, Annalise and Meg and Siju and Kata. That's great. Okay, thank you. So
If I
we've
help
got
Nick
some,
from the audience watching us later, we have about 0, 2, 1, 1, and 2.5
thank you,
in
Ola. That's a good
experience.
point. We should read those out so that other people know. Okay, so that gives me a sense that people aren't very experienced in coding, and that's totally fine. And that we've got a range of fields where, biomechanics and engineering. Yes, I think Python is what we're going to be talking about a lot today. Engineering, coding, Python, very helpful. Science, biology, pathogens. Okay, let's talk about some things. And very roughly speaking, and maybe I'll ask everybody, including you, Ola, if you can speak for the broader audience here. I think of this in terms of coding for producing results and coding for dissemination, whether that's a personal or a project website, or whether that's some kind of application that people are going to use. I'm just kind of curious to get a sense of what people are most interested in. When we talk about coding, is it for like getting results, or is it for public facing, or both, which is perfectly acceptable?
That the module is to help them to understand the language, which leads to public facing, creating just a basic research page where they can introduce themselves. They can present the research skills and projects, and there will be a little form where audience can communicate with them and connect. But the idea is, I hope, bigger, where in the future students will start chasing their dream and start playing with some bigger applications and develop another language. But we have some answers here too, like coding for the sake of it, and both answered for your question. And usually I use it for practical uses, but both are applicable. So public-facing information resource.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give you some examples. We're not going to be able to avoid talking about generative AI here because it's so salient in science and what is science, but I'm going to try and make this not about, I'm not going to center the AI, but it is going to come up because it's so useful, but it comes with all the usual precautions. Ola, did you want to add something?
If I can support you, Nick, in this module, we have small activities where we encourage students to use AI. So I created some prompts for them, how they can use AI to understand more what we are actually learning here.
Excellent. Okay, so let's start off with an example from this project had zero AI involved in it. So this is the one Ola mentioned in that lovely introduction. Thank you for that, Ola. Okay, so this was a project that began with a data scientist, Gareth Kindler, who was at the University of Queensland. And he had data about how basically triangulating three things: the state of biodiversity and threatened species in a number of electorates within Australia. So electorates being regions within the country. Each one of those regions is for voting politically, but it also contains different species. And so the way that this app works is, if I share my screen with you, what you're going to see is that you put in a postcode. So let's say that I am in center of Brisbane, somewhere where we don't often think about there being threatened species, but based on the data that's available in scientific data sets, we can see that there are actually threatened species that are in that suburb. And Gareth was combining that data with the risks to threatened species, with the geographic data. So it's got, this is your electorate, and we can zoom out and see this for this particular species, the Australasian bittern, where it actually is, and that this electorate is in part of it. So sitting behind this is a big data set. And this was like a $20,000 project all up. And most of that was Gareth doing the wrangling of the data to produce the output, and also to pay a web designer to put it all together. And then to kind of combine it with the political side of things, where you can see who is the current representative. So this is using out-of-date data because we don't have funding to keep maintaining it. It's no longer Stephen Bates. And then you can see how they've voted and what you can do to make a contribution politically by writing to someone or voting in a particular way. So what's interesting about this is that this project explicitly aimed to take scientific data, use interaction design to make a website out of that data, and then to get some impact. So this was around the 2022 election. We were doing this, and we got on the front page of the ABC, tens of thousands of people reading it about, can this app put Australia's biodiversity crisis on the election agenda? That's the headline every researcher dreams of seeing, right? It's like, can we influence national politics with our research? So for me, that's kind of where both of these things combine in that example. But there's a lot of other ways that I use code in my research. I'm going to give you one other example and then also encourage you throughout any of this to please ask questions of whichever bits you're interested in, because I know all of these examples backwards and I don't want to just ramble at you about my research. I want to hear about your interests. So I'll keep this short and then either jump on the microphone or use the chat. I will just show one other website example. So two more examples. I can't help myself. Okay, so one is Thriving in Vertical Schools. This is a project. We only released the app last year, and it's the outcome from a 3-year ARC project looking at vertical schools, because in Australia, our cities are becoming more dense and we need to build schools. This was a project where we were funded by the Australian government to ask students about their experience in this type of school. And we spent perhaps let's say around $10,000. I don't know exactly how much it was, developing this website. Jess Greentree was a doctoral student at the time, and she did this as a research assistant producing it. There was a lot of translation that she had to do. We had our journal papers and our findings as kind of PowerPoint presentations. And her and I worked together on some of the interaction design, and then she made it beautiful. We ended up having like a homepage of like, what is this about for someone that just lands here? What was the research about? We have stories, because people understand research through stories, right? They're stories of impact. We can talk more about impact and DORA and where the world's heading at some point, and that could be really interesting because it relates to coding. And then publishing the theory toolkit. This is all possible because the website developer knows how to code and how to turn results into something that is really plain HTML. This is just like HTML5 and Bootstrap, which is basically saying the bare bones of how the internet is made. But it allowed us to put together the theory, all of the research outputs that we had, and to make it beautiful. And we know from the data behind this site that it's traveled all over the world. Okay, the example that I really wanted to get to is just going to shift something across to the sharing screen. Okay, this is a paper from 2024. So I'm in the field of design science, and we study how designers are able to come up with ideas. Design is kind of magical if you just look at it, where someone starts off with this really complex problem. They don't know enough to solve it, but they kind of follow this path of maybe we could try this. Maybe I need to learn that. Maybe I need to talk to this person. And they get to these incredible outcomes that are responsible for the world that we live in. So there's a whole field understanding how people are able to do that. And at the core of that is what we call a design protocol study, where you get someone to talk out loud while they're designing, which produces the outcome of the design and the transcript of everything that they're doing while they're designing. And in the past, for like the last, I don't know, 40 years, researchers have studied these by painstakingly over weeks and weeks, analyzing them line by line. And this was one of the first papers, if not the first paper around the world, to suggest that this could be automated, and to demonstrate that it could be automated and compare human to generative AI. So this was early in 2023 that we published this, but it didn't come out until 2024. And we basically showed that we did everything manually, humans coding transcript data. And then we said we worked really hard to make it repeatable using ChatGPT. And remember, this is like February 2023 at the time we're doing this. And we found that we could get over 80% reliability comparing human to AI. And we did a lot of work to make it that the two could work together. But in order to do that, I was using Python, using natural language processing, producing basically an interactive tool that got this hybrid of human AI. So I would give it the transcript, it would pull out all of the nouns, it would give me a CSV file. I would then go through this process of checking the natural language process output and then only adding in the AI right at the very end to say, I'm now going to replicate that entire human process using the AI. And this is work that has been ongoing. So I've been, in the 2 years since doing this, I've now been, well, I should show you what this actually produced. We went from these transcripts through to this kind of automated representation of what the designer is doing, with concrete concepts in the circles and abstract concepts between them. And we can see the pathway from the production of ideas. And this was very hypothetical early research. So we can talk about this because I've been doing natural language processing and social network analysis for about 15 years now. And so I've sort of been doing that throughout the whole pre-AI and now AI era. And in more recent months, I've been producing plots and getting deeper and deeper into this data, or using machine learning. And I'm just going to finish off by saying like a big idea of where this research has taken me. I started this off doing the old paradigm, as I'll call it, of I have data, I have transcripts, I'm going to analyze it manually with a bit of support from deterministic Python coding. Then I went to, okay, I'm going to use some processes that use API, application programming interface, make calls to the LLM to replace the human in that loop. So it's still like deterministic plus stochastic, if you want to use that language, of using the LLMs to replace some of the human tasks. And then I thought, actually, this should be a Jupyter notebook. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jupyter notebooks, but this is just a way of doing Python coding. A Jupyter notebook is basically Python. Yeah, great, Slappy. I can see you saying your favorite thing. They make it basically, you're able to interact with the different steps in an analysis. They're particularly popular with data scientists. Ola might have already spoken about these in the course. And they're very good for researchers to share their data because it allows people to see each step very clearly, what went in, what came out. And also if you're repeating your analysis. it makes it easier to do with different data. So we kind of see this ratcheting up of it was all human done, human plus LLM, human plus LLM plus Jupyter Notebook to kind of have that interactivity. And what I'm now actually doing in the era of vibe coding, if you're familiar with that term, LLMs, like generative AI of, March 2026 is very good at producing applications. OpenAI just released Codex for Windows, which is an application that lets you just speak in natural language about the application you want to create, and it produces it with better or worse effects. So I basically went from the human doing it to human with natural language processing, human natural language processing plus LLM, Jupyter Notebook for sharing that. And then I realized I could skip that step and I can just produce a whole application that I can share with other researchers that shares this whole process, not just as a result set output, but as anyone can input a design protocol and get the same analysis that I got. And now this has gone like the next level. So in terms of research impact, if you just produce a set of results, that can have a lot less impact than the application that anyone can use to produce those results. And I believe that we're in a research paradigm where papers count for less and less. And Ola, I don't know if you want to go there or if anyone wants to go there, but really, as a researcher, when I was doing my PhD, people were judged on how many journal papers they'd produced and the quality of output. And we're still kind of at the end of that era. I focus on producing journal papers and books because they're what get respected. But increasingly, with generative AI, it's becoming easier and easier for people to produce journal papers and harder for this whole system to function. The number of reviews that I have to do and the number of requests I have to turn down is just off the charts. And so I actually believe that where we're going with impact being on what are you doing, like how is what you're doing actually useful to other humans? And that's kind of the bar that it is all related to. I think that's where we're heading. And so something like this, where you're not just coding, you're sharing your code on GitHub, you're turning your code into an application. I've spoken enough because I'm aware people were at kind of level 1, level 2 with coding. Tell me if I'm speaking in gobbledygook, if anything I'm saying is too much full of jargon. If you want to relate this to your field, I'm happy to have a crack. That, like, if you want to describe your own research or what you're thinking of doing and my ideas about it, please jump in and continue the discussion. Or if you want me to talk more about anything. So, thank you.
I want to ask a question, Nick, if you could tell us a
So,
little bit more about a good design, because you could really share your experience, how important design is in learning, but also your creation of a website and what to focus on, not to put too much information, because we want to make sure they actually see our research, they see what each of our users, participants can share with audience.
yeah, thank you, Ola. And I've just seen your question, Annalise. I'll come back to that later. So I teach interaction design to first year students. That's been something I've taught for 7 years now, and I get a great deal of joy out of that because interaction design is all around us. Every time I use lifts as an example. I have a hobby of taking photos of pretty much every lift I get into, to the embarrassment of my partner. And it's something that's so simple. If you're getting into a lift, you want to go to a certain level and you're going to get out of the lift. And yet, even in an interaction that's straightforward, there's 100 different designs. Some of them work well, some of them work badly. Even within just the Brisbane rail system, you can find 5 different designs of lifts. And it's all done with a designer sitting down thinking about how to achieve this goal. And I use that example because we understand interaction design in the physical world really well. It's just an intuitive human thing of if you're like trying to open a door and you can't figure out how it opens, you know that's bad design because it's physical. But in the virtual world, it's often hard for lay people to realize that if you're finding it hard to use a program or a website, it's not you, it's that the designer has done a bad job of it. And most of our systems at QUT have fairly bad interaction design. Most universities have fairly bad interaction design. That's just the nature of tertiary education. Interaction design's constantly adapting to the technology, to the expectations of people. Again, I won't try and give you the whole semester-long intro to interaction design. What this means for researchers is that you can't just rely on your intuitions because you, as the researcher, have typically spent years on your topic. You are so deep inside it and inside your data that you need a set of tools for how to break out of that. And to put the learnings from interaction design into a nutshell, you want to start by thinking about who is going to be reading what you're producing. So let's say it's a website. Let's say that you're wanting to make a website to share your findings for some kind of project. You're thinking, who is this for? Is this for other researchers who all have PhDs and are already interested in this topic? Typically, no. Typically, you want this to be for a lay audience, for sharing with your dad and your family to show what you're talking about, to share with a newspaper as background, critically, to share with policymakers who might, if you're doing a submission to a government consultation, they often come out and you want to be ready for that and be able to say, oh, here's our vertical schools website that has everything you need. It gives you so much authority in the field. So in making that vertical schools example I showed you, we were explicitly trying to influence international researchers, principals of schools, and educational policymakers. So we changed our language. It was about vertical schools, but even that term sounds like jargon. So we were like schools that go out, schools that go up rather than out. We're trying to make it simple right from the get-go. So interaction design, who are we designing it for? And then the next one isn't so intuitive. You're saying, what are their goals when they're using this? This is the step that interaction designers get and other people typically don't get. So with that vertical schools one, we thought about this long and hard. We did some prototypes. We talked to people and we realized that people who come to the site want one of two things. They want just the basic, what is this all about? And who is involved? So on the front page, it's got like a learn about thriving in vertical schools and an about page. And they want specific stories, like you did a 4-year research project. What did you find? Or we could similarly talk about the threatened Australians. We approached this in the same way. Who's going to be using this? We want this to be ordinary, everyday Australians down to the age of 13. We explicitly tried to get this into science classrooms in high schools and had some success with that. And so again, plain language, but the interaction on that front page is like, what is your postcode? It gets you to do an action straight away. But even if you're just writing a blog post, you can use this same way of thinking. I've published a lot on The Conversation, had a few 100,000 people, about 200,000 people read my articles. And that's always approached in the same way of who is going to read this? What are their goals when they're reading it? It's a good way to make sure your message is on target. And then all of the other things like color design and usability and hierarchy of information, they come secondary to that. And maybe you should take a first-year interaction design course if you're interested in those things. But if I could just share two things, it would be think about who's going to be reading it and what their goals are, and then tailor what you're doing for them. Did that answer the question, Ola? Or did you want to ask any
Yes.
follow-ups?
No,
Yeah,
that's
great.
exactly what's important and what we talked about designing our first pages. Yes, thank you so much. And I
No
like the
problem.
relevance to the lifts.
Um,
That's important to actually focus on something you like and put something personal in your page.
yeah, I might actually just see if I can find a document to share with everyone where I've just got, this is like my first year, first semester where I've written down some of those things that just give people a takeaway if they're interested. Um, what is interaction design? Here you go. This is just in case that's interesting. And DXB 110 is the course code. So I've just shared in the chat week one, what is interaction design? I wrote a journal paper and then I summarized the journal paper for my undergrad students for week one. So I wanted to address your question, Annalise, where you said, I'm wanting to learn to create graphed results for things like growth curves and for modeling proteins. Okay, I can give you an example of this. So it'll be a bit of a story, but that's okay. I think we're up for it. So continuing on that example about the design protocols, if I can just find the right thing. Bear with me one moment. Okay, so basically I published a follow-up paper where we realized that instead of just drawing pretty graphs, which is what I showed you, like the connected networks of what people were doing, we needed quantitative results, right? And to get quantitative results, I had to do the coding for that. I'm just going to assume that, you know, you're interested in doing the coding. Um, and and again, so this is now the second journal paper. The first one was very tree, just saying, hey, here's a really good idea. Someone should look more into automating things. We don't really know what variables are interesting. We don't really know what representations we need. This is like a year later. We're now doing a second journal paper. Sorry, my screen sharing isn't quite working. I'm not sure why my computer's frozen. Is everyone still hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you and see you, but
Okay, I've got.
screen share is not.
That's okay. Let's forget the screen share. Basically, I just got deeper into the okay, that was Adobe Acrobat deciding to cancel. Forget the screen share. Another journal paper that focused on quantitative results, one-offs, but now we've gone to producing plots from like 80 different protocols. Yeah, a lot of things are freezing right now.
Yeah.
I might have to
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, so long as you can hear me. Yeah, so basically using Python with the matplotlib, which is sorry, with my screen completely frozen, I've lost all of my tools for thinking. Is a way that people often produce graphs because, I mean, the standard ways of doing things are to use R for data analysis, where R is like a common tool used for statistics and data mining, but increasingly using Python, which has a lot of those libraries, is able to produce exactly the same results. And critically, you can get support from ChatGPT or Claude Code or any of the LLMs for what you're doing. You can ask for advice in producing your plots, which needs to come with the disclaimer that you don't want to put any sensitive data into any of these public-facing programs. You don't ever want to trust their output without checking every line of code and making sure it's right. and you want to take full responsibility for everything that is being produced. I can't show you any examples because my screen is completely frozen. Partly because I'm actually running some computational things in the background, I suspect is why it's doing that, which is appropriate for this. So I'm canceling all of those. And if I drop out for any reason, Ola, I will come back online immediately.
Yeah, thank you. That's what happens sometimes with coding when you have too many applications open, just not everything can be delivered. And Nick, can you still hear us? I think we lost Nick. So maybe I will ask everyone here, how are you going with small tasks? As I said, you have more time. If anyone also hearing me online, if you need some extension for a few weeks to go through all activities, just email me. And there's no problem. I just want to make sure you go through step by step to understand the process, how all the languages are connected, how you small changes in your style can actually affect how everyone can see your website. So just take your time. Don't be overwhelmed. It's not the purpose of this module. And as Nick said, it's about design as well. So think, who is your audience? Is it a young group of people? Is it more researchers in your age group? Think about accessibility from other people. So there's a lot of things to consider when you design your pages, and then how you can link them together, how you can extend your page. Like right now in our navigation, we link our sections, but the same way you can link other pages, creating the big portal, which consists of few HTML pages. So we'll play about this in my announcement. I will give you some tips about it. And I'm really happy we have a lot of you with a big experience in Python or other approaches to managing your data. And I really appreciate everyone joining in discussions. And yes, Nick is back. Hello, Nick.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for the delay.
Thank you. We can see you and your camera is working as well.
Yeah, I think I just overloaded my computer a bit. So as a part of that, I've lost everything I had in the chat. So does anyone want to jump on the microphone and ask any questions or get more specific?
Don't be shy, guys.
I think I was starting to talk about matplotlib,
Yes.
which is what used to be MATLAB, which is widely used by engineers and is now kind of like a go-to for creating scientific figures. So I think, Annalise, your question that was about creating plots, if you were to like, describe your variables, describe your kinds of data, yeah, no, it's not just a coincidence. Those two things are related. It was explicitly designed to emulate the kinds of plots that MATLAB did. I don't think it's the same code. I think it was created by someone else to replicate its functions. Yeah, which is great because I tried using MATLAB around the time when it was doing novel things and I hated it. And then I got into Python and I just found Matplotlib is a joy to use and it makes intuitive sense to me. So for anyone who's kind of starting that coding journey, most universities offer what they variously call data carpentry courses, or they'll have e-research specialists. So where I am at QT, we offer data carpentry, and our e-research people are quite brilliant, and the courses they offer are really informative. So they will hold your hand and help you with getting started in Python and show you how to use a Jupyter notebook and show you how to create plots with Python. You've got all these options, and a lot of people are kind of like, where do I even begin? And for those of you who said 0 or 1 on my 5-point scale, as a researcher, you should learn Python. I will just say that straight up. It is so, the three things I would suggest are learning HTML, Python, and JavaScript, as just like HTML and JavaScript are the building blocks of the internet. They're really straightforward to learn. It's kind of like half a day and you'll understand how most websites are put together. That's kind of like in the same way that a ceramicist or a potter uses clay as their medium for making bowls or cups or jugs. It's the same with the internet. Everything is made out of HTML and JavaScript. They're the material of the internet. So I would learn those. For anything data analysis or presentation, or for dynamically creating websites, I would learn Python. There are countless resources online for learning Python. So QUT does, if we go to, I'll share with you a link. Is everybody here at QUT? No, that's what I thought. So I'll share a QUT reference, which is just going to be for people at QUT. So for everyone else, actually, I'll share the broader link. So data carpentry is like this whole movement of building universal data skills. And they've got some lessons on there. So I haven't checked that website. I just know that it's a really useful movement, but it's sort of, yeah, I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but it's kind of an international language that's used for these things. At QUT, it's through e-research is what you'd type into the digital workplace for those who are, yeah, and they offer courses as well. So if you look through their service catalog, and apologies to everyone who's not at QUT, but most universities will have something like e-research because it's a huge part of what we do. But honestly, for learning Python, if you just type learn Python, there's 1,001 different places that will offer you courses. A good one is W3 Schools is a not-for-profit international institution. Right, Swathi, we had the same idea at the same time. That's a good place to go. And there's also paid ones that work for some people, but I think learning Python, you can get everything you need free online. I'm just trying to think what else I can share that might be useful. Oh, there are a few tools that are interesting. So does anybody publish in LaTeX? So if you're not familiar, LaTeX is kind of its origins in computer science and a beautiful way of typesetting anything, but particularly for mathematics, engineering, computer science researchers, anything technical, because it's very good with equations, people will typically be publishing in LaTeX. So the standard tool for many years has been overleaf.com if you're writing in LaTeX, but there's just a few weeks ago, OpenAI released their version of a collaborative LaTeX environment. And this is particularly interesting for any of you in engineering or computer science because it includes this tool in there. They will offer to review your paper, give you a technical review of everything that you've put in there. So it kind of combines a collaborative LaTeX environment with OpenAI iterations and technical critique. I think the message I'm trying to say is, if I had to give a summation of it, academia is changing. The nature of knowledge work is changing. Not only do you need to be an expert in your field and gathering the data, getting the results, you need to be able to do the analysis. And all fields are changing. So in mathematics, I was listening to a talk by Terence Tao, who's the Australian Fields Medal winner. He is saying in his field, he can produce a lot more papers, and every paper is more technically correct because he uses AI. And also he can produce huge amounts of computational data. So like in number theory, you'll like test your theory out for all numbers up to 10 to the 50 or whatever you can feasibly do computationally to support what you're doing. And it's the same with what I was saying in design about, it used to be one person does 12 design protocols. Now I can do 80 or 800 automatically. And in all of your fields, that same kind of transformation is happening where we went, 10 years ago, everyone was talking about big data, maybe 15 years ago, big data, like having more data, more velocity of the data, more fine-grained data. Now we're going to big analysis where we're able to do more fine-grained analysis over more things. So this final step then of communication is more important than ever because you are the person who has to be asking the right questions, who has to have the creative control, who has to have the skills to be able to quality check anything the AI gives you, to be able to tweak what you receive. And I think these steps of analysis and communication go together because everything I was saying about what you kind of design for a website, of knowing who you're designing for and thinking about what their goals are, that then flows through into, oh, I need this kind of analysis that I didn't have before. Oh, I could produce this kind of interactive graphic. And what's quite amazing is what people are able to do if you kind of get your mind out of the kind of classic way that research gets represented. So what I mean by that is there's this default assumption that, okay, I'm doing science. I'm going to produce a few scatter plots or line graphs. I'm doing agricultural science or engineering. I'm going to produce this kind of representation. Every field has their kind of default of what it looks like to have an archetypal high quality journal paper. That's great. But I see my undergraduate students producing 3D video representations of speculative futures. I see them producing interactive data visualizations that are kind of ready to publish online. And this is kind of like second or third year undergrad students are doing that. As researchers, you want to be challenging yourself to think, oh, I've got a finding. I'm assuming you've gathered your data, you've got your interesting things about agricultural science, whatever you're doing. You've got the graph, you've got the orthodox outcome. But now in the AI era, you want to be saying, in a dream world, what is the coolest representation I could produce of this? If I could have a website with interactive visualizations that let people play with the variables, input their own data, what could I do? And now we're in an era, and if not today, then at least within a few months, where you can just ask that of a coding agent and it will produce it for you within 24 hours. That's like, we're already there. but it's a bit too full of errors for it to work for everyone. But increasingly, it'll just be there. And having those skills, I think, will become essential for a researcher. It will no longer just be, if you're applying for a job after completing a PhD, it's no longer just going to be how many papers do you have? How many citations do they have? It's too easy to do H-index hacking, people using all kinds of tricks and tools. The number of reviews that you get that have, you know, people are using generative AI to produce papers that are of medium interest, that are papers for the sake of papers. There are people out there who publish more papers than they read, which is really problematic. But there's just so much published that how do you even begin to read what's interesting? So papers are losing their currency and impact is gaining its currency. Hey, I produced a website that was on the front page of the ABC News that influenced this policy that happened, or that I know that has been used, from my data, I can see it's been accessed by 50 countries around the world. And I know that my local Queensland government Department of Public Works has used it to change their engineering processes. Whatever it is, these kinds of statement of impact are going to matter more. At my university, we're one of two universities that have adopted DORA. So one is Melbourne University and one is QUT. Other unis will probably adopt it. But basically, a bunch of people from the American Society for Cell Biology asked themselves, what even should we be looking at in terms of the output of scientific research? And they came up with these protocols, and they then got formalized and adopted around the world, basically saying, let's stop just looking at journal papers and metrics, and let's start looking at more interesting kinds of impact. And I think that's where the world really is heading. So coding is a part of that. We haven't really got into any of the nuts and bolts of coding, but I don't actually think this is the place for that. I think this is the place for just Python can do so much if you have those basic skills. Python plus generative AI is powerful beyond words. Also, actually, really good point. Generative AI is a really good tutor for learning Python. If you just find a Python script for something that you want to do, like you just search online for a Python script, and then you can just ask ChatGPT to go through line by line explaining what things are. You can ask any question you want. It's not ChatGPT is not a great tutor for some things, but when it comes to learning coding, it's actually a brilliant tutor. All right. What else do people want to talk about? I know we've only got another 5 or so minutes left.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Is there anything you would like to ask? We have such a knowledgeable Nick here. Anyone? Or maybe you want to share your experience. You want to tell us how you're actually going. Are there any very difficult moments when you apply all the exercises? Is there anything like that?
I'd be curious to hear, Swathi, if you felt like sharing how you've used Jupyter notebooks in your own research. If you've got any stories you wanted to share, I think that'd be really interesting.
Maybe Swathi?
Hi. Oops.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I've been doing my MPhil and I'm almost at the end of it. But my project, okay, I guess in general, I like to use Jupyter notebooks for graphs and things like that. And because I started off, in terms of my coding knowledge, I started off with Python. So I'm most comfortable with Python in many cases. And in undergrad, I also had a module that was similar to what I'm teaching in now, which is, how to use Jupyter notebooks for data science. And I mean, there's also a few times that they try to teach us how to use like the AI models, like the ones that you see in code, and not exactly ChatGPT, but the more bare bones sort of AI. Um, but yeah, for mostly I use it like the data science side of things. I like to, so if I'm doing an experiment and I have like, uh, tabulated results or Excel sheets, I can just import it into the Jupyter notebooks, do whatever cleaning I want to do with it, and then plot it in my preferred way. As for the part about Matplotlib, I actually tend to use MATLAB quite a bit. So I think it's because I have learned MATLAB for specific use cases, and I'm more comfortable with using that for certain purposes. Like if I'm looking at a MRI image or something, I'm more familiar with the MATLAB libraries for those. Whereas for Python, I just use it with, any general data or like Excel sheet data. Like for design, from a design point of view, I prefer using Python. Yeah, so I think that's the difference between the two. In terms of my project, I used it for like, I did some mechanical testing and then I plotted those, like the stress strain curves in a sense. But for like MRI images and stuff, I prefer using MATLAB to visualize those. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. And I think you made another really important point there about cleaning the data first, because
Yeah.
that's something that, everyone's got to do. And that's something, garbage in, garbage out. I'm sure that's pretty obvious to everybody, but the coding isn't going to help you with that.
Yeah, actually, like I'm one of those people who is somewhat against Gen AI and like ChatGPT because many people are just going straight into it without knowing what it's actually outputting. And even in the module that I'm teaching in, EGB 103, that's literally teaching people how to use Jupyter notebooks. But a lot of the students tend to use ChatGPT straight from the start. And they don't actually learn the correct stuff, or like they don't know how to access a documentation and read it up for themselves. That's why I have to make it a point to be like, there's this thing called W3 schools. Go look up the code yourself and learn how to do that because that is more valuable than typing stuff on ChatGPT and then you get the correct answer, but you don't know how you got it. Like that's something that kind of peeves me off a bit. But yeah, it is what it is. This era, a lot of people are going super deep into ChatGPT. I think it's not so bad if you're already experienced, so you know what is the BS and what is the actual usable stuff. Uh, but yeah, data cleaning is quite important, and that is a whole process in itself because we would when we are doing research, I mean, maybe in engineering it's not so bad because you're having a machine outputting data, but if you're looking at social sciences or maybe like form responses, they're gonna be a lot more messy. You need like know how to format everything to suit your purposes. Otherwise, it'll be really hard to like, for example, if you're looking at categorical data, like someone might write the maybe 1 to 5, but someone might write something else that doesn't match your format. You have to fix that. Yeah, so those are things that are also being taught in the module at some point of time, but uh, not something that a lot of people think of on first thought. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. To which I would just add, that's a really good point that the research is coming out now that shows people think they're learning when they're using generative AI, and there's not a lot sticking. They think they know it well because they can get the outcome, but if you actually interrogate it, then they've learned a lot less
Yeah.
than doing the struggle. And the other thing is that as researchers, it should go without saying that like we are the people in society that are meant to have the highest standards. Like there are people who have had papers come back with AI hallucinations, and um, you know, that's not acceptable. Like the whole point is that we need transparency and accountability in what we're doing. So we be honest in saying when we're using Gen AI, because it shouldn't be taboo or censored. I don't think that's helpful, but we are accountable. Our reputation is on the line for every single thing that we publish, and that includes our code. People made human errors before. I know someone who, got a positive to negative sign wrong in some code that he was writing for his PhD and already had results published that, people made human errors. They will also make AI errors. That's okay. The point is that we should be having a really high standard. So if you're publishing things that you don't even understand and can't even explain, that's problematic. And if you're going to do it, you should at least own up to it. And maybe what you're doing is interesting enough that it can stand regardless of that fact. But transparency and accountability are the two words that I'm hearing lately around Gen AI and a very useful way to explain it. I'm aware we've gone over time, so I'll throw back to you, Ola, but thank you, Swati. That's really nice to hear how you're using it. And it seems a really good fit with your engineering work.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nick. And maybe just a quick sentence that it's really important what we can take away from this meeting. Maybe the design is not separate, it's embedded in everything you do as a researcher, and we really encourage you to start applying it in your work, and even in a small way. And I agree with the Python. Try using AI step by step to learn more if you want to play with your data, which you need to clean first, but not everyone will be in that space which needs to use it. But good luck, and I want to bring you all encouraged to join our online discussions if you have more questions. And thank you again, Nick, for joining us. It's always a pleasure, and thank you for sharing your experience. And I will
Pleasure to
share
be
all
here.
the links from you. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thanks everyone for
Thank you
being
so
here.
much.
Bye.
Bye.